Welcome to EPI STEM podcast. This EPI STEM podcast is brought to you from the National Centre of STEM Education at the School of Education in the University of Limerick. I'm your host, Geraldine Simi, and I'm the Professor of STEM Education here at the Centre and the Director of EPI STEM. And my co-host,
Michelle Starr, and I am the Research Liaison Officer in EPI STEM.
Welcome back, everybody. And here today, our very special guest, we've Dr. Michaela Hayes. And Michaela is here in the University of Limerick in the School of Education. And she's a university teacher. And she's a university teacher connected to technology education. And she's here today to tell us about that. You're very welcome, Michaela.
Welcome, Michaela.
Thank you very much, Geraldine and Michelle. I'm delighted to be here this morning and looking forward to chatting to both of you.
Yeah, so before we get into anything happening in the university, can you tell us a little bit about how you got drawn into technology education, where you're from or anything like that, about schooling or anything that you'd like to tell us?
Yeah, so I suppose it kind of goes back to my post-primary school experience, and I suppose thinking about where I'm from, I'm originally from Quinn, just outside Ennis. I'm now living along the Shannon Estuary, so I moved from one side of Ennis to the other side. And I went to school in Coláiste Mhuire in Ennis, so that is the all-girls secondary school. I completed my Leaving Cert in 2012, and when I was thinking about it, I was coming in here and I was thinking about the subject choice for my Leaving Cert. So I would have completed construction studies as part of my choice for the Leaving Cert, and I suppose it's quite a unique experience going to Coláiste Mhuire in Ennis, a big advocate of the technology space. And
an all-girls school as well.
Yeah. So I would always advocate for them, and it's interesting because, you know, and it's something we'll probably speak about a little bit later on, is that it's a good feeder as well for the programmes, and that we normally have, you know, of the females in the programme, we normally have one or two that would have come from Coláiste Mhuire in Ennis. So no, it is excellent. So that's
an inspirational piece that puts you into the space.
Definitely.
And you're lecturing then in graphics and wood technology and all of that area, and construction studies. That's kind of your university teacher space.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I suppose thinking about the modules that I lead out on, I suppose they're kind of more pedagogy related. So I take second year pre-service teachers in the undergrad programme in year 2, semester 1, before placement is almost like a preparation for placement. I also deal a lot with PME1 students in terms of technology education, pedagogy modules as well. And I suppose in semester 2, then I lead out on 2 other modules in relation to technology teacher as the researcher.
Lovely.
Which is a lovely module. And then the other module is most interesting as well in relation to health and safety in the technology space, and I suppose your legal responsibility as the teacher, which is interesting because it's a space I think that is maybe deficient within the Irish context, and there isn't a whole pile of work done on it just yet. And I suppose if you're to look at the guidelines, they're all quite old and maybe a little bit outdated. So we do a lot of comparison work between Ireland and the UK, and kind of drawing from British standards as much as we can to kind of promote, you know, best practice in terms of health and safety within the technology space.
That's lovely. And what I think what you're doing with the pedagogy as well is you're picking, I suppose, for the listener out there, we're actually talking about how you teach and getting the young people, pre-service teachers, to say to them how to teach.
Exactly.
So you're kind of doing that piece, but we're calling it pedagogy because it's not just instruction, or the relationship of learning, the foundational disciplines. There's a whole lot in it, the space. So pedagogy is a better way of naming it.
It is. It's much more well-rounded, I think, than most people think. And I suppose the main area, and I think it's the area that, you know, might be more drawn to maybe the female cohort, if we're to think about the gender imbalance. You know, it's that care piece, and I suppose it's something that I'm probably quite good at in terms of, you know, delivering a project from start to finish. You know, a lot of people think that maybe construction studies or maybe wood technology might be just seeing the project from start to finish. That's it, move on to the next one. But I suppose it's what the student can get out of that project is a lot more than, you know, just seeing that from start to finish. It's the values they can develop and that they can take it elsewhere, the skills and the knowledge that may be transferable then to maybe other subjects or, you know, outside of school and that type of thing.
Exactly. And it's great to hear that, because talking about the pedagogy, which is something that I mean, we talk about between ourselves a lot, especially in the STEM educations, you know, it's kind of forgotten about. It's that, and it's not just about passing on the information. What you're doing is you're working with the students, bringing them in that love of the subject itself.
Yeah.
And where did that whole concept come from? I suppose going back to I don't know if you want to talk about your thesis study, which I find fascinating.
Yeah. And I think if you think about my thesis study, so I graduated from the PhD programme last year, so early 2025. And I think a big area within my thesis I was quite drawn to while I was exploring kind of the navigation, negotiation that took place among a student teacher and a cooperating teacher during a team teaching relationship. I think it was the theoretical framework that underscored that, that really meant a lot to me. And it was something that I could kind of maybe almost empathise with in terms of my own experience as maybe a student teacher, and comparing that to possibly other teaching experiences that I had. So, you know, if you're to think about the theoretical framework which was developed, you know, it's a blend of, you know, Foucault and power and the exchange of power, not just being powerful and powerless, but in order to get maybe a greater insight into that exchange, it warranted maybe a little bit more of a further investigation to that. And actually, the idea of deliberative democracy and Habermas and moving away from, you know, the idea of the majority rule and more towards navigating that interaction and how that interaction is actually, I suppose, navigated really. So if you're to bring that back to, you know, the idea of pedagogy within the technology education class, it's, you know, how are you going to navigate, you know, your learning experience as a teacher in the class in the most effective way possible, because you have to think about the nature of the classroom is quite diverse. So, you know, how are you going to deliver this to all the students in the class in an effective way?
And that whole idea of democracy is actually against elitism, and it's actually trying to pull education down from being too elitist, and it's coming into the space where it is actually you're making a deliberative, as you say, the Habermas deliberative democracy. You're trying to actually do something that's original there in the space of trying to do that. And there's also, I suppose, even in terms of embodied cognition, because there's students have hands on and minds on and hearts on. That's all new knowledge coming in from neuroscience that wasn't there in the past.
Very true.
It was seen that, you know, if you were making, you weren't thinking. And if you were thinking, you weren't going to be making. Isn't there something there in that technology side of it?
Definitely.
That's a history. There's an elitist history there.
So. Yeah, and I think that, I suppose that's a nice way of looking at it. And I suppose if you're to draw it back to what we do, you know, the cognitive, the affective and the psychomotor. So, you know, I suppose what the students will know, what they'll be able to do, and I suppose any values you can kind of develop amongst them and appreciation. So it's a nice way of looking at it in that it's just not all I suppose or it's not all knowledge based, you know, it's a combination of them. It's got
the theory practice.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose the heart piece as well.
And the heart piece. I'm thinking when I was in Maynooth University and I was with the philosopher Pádraig Hogan, and he has written some beautiful books, but one of them was called The Heart Work of Teaching and Learning, and it had an outstanding effect on the way I was working, because here was somebody, and particularly a man, and he was writing about the heart work of teaching and learning and caring and the importance of that. So I see that coming across. I suppose it's a great achievement of the PhD done. You must be enjoying that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose the last 12 months have given me kind of an opportunity to maybe dip my toe in the water elsewhere, you know, which has been nice. And I suppose having worked in the university, this is I think it's my 9th year working in the university now. I would have spent the first 6 years working within school placement, and this is my 3rd year then, I suppose, moving back into my subject. So it's nice to be able to bring the knowledge from school placement and apply that within, I guess, the pedagogical space as well, you know, to underscore what we're doing, and also applying maybe like the theoretical framework in other places.
Yeah, and just I have to add for our listeners that theoretical framework, you know, that you're doing with the Foucault, okay, that's used a lot, you know, in understanding the power relationships, especially within schools, and whether it's at policy level or within the school or in the classroom itself. But bringing in the Habermas and the deliberate democracy is, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, it is very unique, because it's a thing, you know, democracy is something in general that's not really taught, or thought about in Ireland. And, it's about everyone thinks, because we hear it from our policy level people, we have a democratic society, which we do, but I think it's seen as that in that majority way, which you're talking about is the one where everyone has a say. And I think bringing that into the STEM, which is just... I think it's phenomenal, and then it's
what makes
teaching.
it education.
Yeah,
I think
and
so.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's hard work, and we had in Ireland anyway, and of course we assume democracy. Whereas actually democracy has to be worked at, so it either is very thin or it's actually thicker. And it has to be. It can't be assumed then, because you're struggling trying to bring everyone in and bring voices in.
Particularly, it's harder.
Yeah, it is. It's hard work.
And a nice way of looking at it is in terms of, and it's something that I draw on throughout the theoretical framework, is the idea of the promotion of common good. Within the kind of exchange, within the interaction. And I would always say, the common good in our instance would be for pupil and professional learning. So, is this going to be of benefit to the students within our classes? Or alternatively, if you're thinking about the development of professional practice, is it going to be of influence to the teacher going forward? So I suppose when we're thinking about the promotion of common good within democracy, you're tying it back all the time.
Yeah,
so
and you're explaining what common good is, because it's a thing we hear all the time, but no one actually says.
It's not even in the policy enough either, because that collective responsibility, education isn't building or inspiring that. It's been going after the last 10, 15 years, the individual competitive learner.
Yeah.
And it hasn't said much about, even the OECD reports in recent days have said, look, we've thought about the pipeline of talent, but we haven't thought that much about citizenship. And now we're actually in danger of losing democracy across the world.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't even need to go into the world news today, but it's actually under threat everywhere because it involves hard work, it involves diplomacy, it involves understanding the other fellow's opinion coming from somewhere else.
Reflexivity.
And
we always
it does. It does. And being able to critique yourself as well as others, and not finger pointing, and so it's worth having it in there. But it's great to think that that's part of your approach.
Definitely, and it's
very unique.
Yeah. And then when these technology education students are becoming teachers and they're doing that in their classrooms, they'll be thinking of designing and digital skills and all that, but they're thinking of it from the perspective of how they can make a difference to the world. Is that the thinking? Yeah,
that is. And I think what really made that clear for me was I completed a digital badge last semester around the development of sustainability for education. And I think that allowed me to, I suppose, a small bit of space to think about my teaching and learning, think about my modules that I was delivering, and also, how I could apply the UN SDGs or, Sustainable Development Goals to my teaching. And it's interesting because a lot of the feedback the module got was that, we were integrating them to some extent without even realising it. So, when I'm thinking about my module, we do a good bit of work around the development of projects for students and particular class groups. But, if you're to relate that back to the SDGs, you're thinking about, how can this project cater for, the diverse nature of the classroom in terms of, reducing inequalities, which happens to be one of the SDGs. Because, within the diverse nature of the class, you plan for a project, but is every single student in the class going to be able to complete this project? So you need to be able to think about how can you adapt and amend the project for giving the students who need support, giving them that space, and those who maybe might progress a little bit faster than others, how you're kind of maybe challenging those in that space as well. So, it really ties, I suppose, the whole lot up together for me, really, by being able to kind of showcase and incorporate those goals.
Yeah, and that's not just about resources, which is part, but it's also, I'll just put in the gender, issue, which is culture. So you're thinking of, what is the culture here? What are the biases? You came from a very unusual situation, I have to say, when you were talking about earlier from Scolvera in Ennis, where you did construction studies and technology. How rare is that for an all-girls school?
Rare. And it's interesting because as part of my 4th year undergraduate module at the minute, technology teacher as a researcher, they complete, I suppose, their own project in maybe a particular area that they are interested in. And it's interesting because a lot of them would talk about gender inequality and it not being offered in all girls schools and, you know, this thing. But it kind of made me realise how unique an experience it was that, you know, the technologies were heavily promoted and offered and you got so much support in the area, which was great. So,
and then when they do come in, you have to think of the culture. So you have to, I mean, what is your ratio at the moment? I suppose
it's actually it's interesting. I was actually thinking about this coming in this morning. In terms of, I suppose, my unique experience, I went from going to an all girls secondary school, and then when I started as a student, you were essentially going into an all boys, you know, class or whatever. But at the moment, I would say that the ratio, you know, it's probably, I'd say, 5%, maybe 6%, 7% girls.
So that's so you have to be mindful of that culture of what's, you know, even the banter and to keep the girls included, which are the minority. And it brings back to your deliberate democracy.
It does, and I suppose the promotion of the, you know, the common good, pupil and professional learning and how we navigate that experience as
and that you deliberately try and make examples of the education to be interesting across the board. But the SDGs are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that hold sustainable education through technology education. We're interested in it through STEM and through STEAM and bringing in the arts and humanities and seeing the young person. Really, that's what you're doing, because I'm hearing you, and it's only recently it dawned on me, like, you know, one of those light bulb moments, why we do foundational skills with teachers. We don't just teach the teachers, student teachers, just only the subjects. We actually have foundational studies, philosophy, history and sociology. They get all of those subjects through their 4-year degree or through their 2-year PME, and they get the foundational disciplines simply because of making sure that they're thinking of the person and they're understanding why they're doing something, as well as the know-how and all that.
Yeah, very true. And I suppose when you're to think about it, like, it's good in that my experience, I've actually taught on a number of, you know, foundational modules across the school. So it's good in respects to that I'm able to, when they come into me in 2nd year or 4th year, you know, I'm able to draw on, you know, what they would have completed in other modules, just to prompt their thinking around it, because sometimes it's nice to draw, I suppose, the connection among the modules, you know, for coherency and coherency of experience.
And we have a big chart in EPI STEM, and when you come in the door now, we have a big chart with the United Nations sustainability goals, and like reducing in gender inequality and reducing poverty and having people live better together in the world. So we really don't want the baby thrown out with the bathwater, even if the UN isn't working the way the world wants it at the moment. We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. These are important human rights and all of that it's important we reinvigorate them, really, I suppose. Find a way of reinvigorating them.
And even, you know, I suppose moving beyond the kind of pedagogy space, like even if you're to have a look at other SDGs, like for example, good health. And that's something that I would kind of embed within my health and safety module, because, you know, not only are you the technology teacher and you have a legal responsibility inside in the class, but, you know, how do you maintain that amongst your students as well? And so it's something to, I would always try and draw back to now that I'm conscious of them, because I think there might be, you know, kind of presumptions around like the UN SDGs, because you might think it might be to do with obviously like sustainability, climate change and everything like that, but it also relates to going back to like the democracy piece and the common good.
And feeling you've skin in the game. You're important, and you're having you're living as a citizen and as a person and your own right and with a mind, as well as being a worker. There's other facets of your life that are taken care of as well. It's more holistic. That's what a real wholesome education is, isn't it? And university has the space there to do that. So I know know you're doing a European project with Nicky Blom and Donal Canty and all of that on active learning methodologies. Do you want to talk for a minute on it?
Yeah, so myself, Nicky and Donal are involved in a blended intensive programme with a number of European higher education institutions. So we have the virtual component of the blended intensive programme completed, whereby all the institutions come together at one stage throughout the week and deliver a workshop based on their decided active learning methodologies. So I guess we had a range of seminars over the last probably 6-7 weeks in relation to, I suppose, our area was design thinking. There was other seminars delivered around place-based learning, experiential learning, learning by doing, and also the flipped classroom. So I suppose our European colleagues are from Spain, Italy, Lithuania, and then ourselves in Ireland. And we're actually preparing to go to Murcia in Spain next week to the host institution for, I guess, an intensive week of workshops as part of the blended intensive programme. So we'll be delivering the in-person, I guess, component of the blended intensive programme there.
Because that blended intensive, just to be, it means both
virtual,
virtual and
in person. So there's two. Sorry for the misunderstanding, but there's two components as part of a blended intensive programme. So you have the virtual component, and then you've got the in-person component. So everybody was required to deliver a workshop via online, and then the follow-up then will be during the intensive week in Murcia next week. So we're looking forward to that, and I guess the week will consist of, I guess, the in-person workshops. We're actually doing a number of school visits to local schools in the area, which will be interesting to see. There is a couple of different seminars then taking place over the course of the week in relation to, I suppose, learning by doing, and also the influence of the classroom space. And what's most interesting is we're actually bringing 6 fourth-year students with us as well. So 6 students from the LMO 9495 programme, which is our engineering technology and also our construction technology programme. There's 3 of each that are coming along with us.
Fabulous.
So that'll definitely add to their teaching and learning repertoire and I suppose influence their experience going forward.
Because I mean, we get such a marvellous it's an eye-opener to go abroad anyway, work with other European colleagues, go to Spain, have work with other countries. It's a great way of actually improving the scholarship of what we're doing, and it's and it gives you a kind of an outward look, and it helps you, I suppose, see how you can do things better and how well we can hold our own and all that. It does all of that. Michaela, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Is there anything else you feel that you might need to have said that you've left out or forgotten or anything?
No, I think I've covered everything, I suppose, in terms of my work to date and different projects I'm working on at the moment. So thank you so much, Geraldine.
Thank you, and enjoy next week. And we're dying to hear how you get on.
I'll definitely catch up with both of you.
And every best wish with your future research. And I know you've presented at conferences, and you're going to be now folding in lovely research, and it's marvellous that you have that conceptual framework on your work. So congrats on that, and enjoy Spain.
Thank you very much.
You're in a unique little spot.
Thank you very much.
You're great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela.
So we'll finish off today with some music from Caoimhe Doherty. Caoimhe is from Limerick, and she's a 3rd year in the BA in World Music in the Irish World Academy of Music and Dance here at the University of Limerick. And she is going to play for us 2 lovely jigs, all running one into the other. One is called The Rolling Wave, and the second one is called Banished Misfortune.